pushing back against migrants and refugees trying to reach northern Europe. They arrived in a camp in the Greek town of Diavata on Thursday after hearing that border controls had been lifted and buses were prepared to take people to North Macedonia. But the reports were false. Rumours circulated on social media. Greek security forces have been preventing them from breaking through a cordon near the border with North Macedonia.
Greece is in a tough situation. Its people are already struggling from an economic crisis, and now they have to help more immigrants. Some immigrants feel they aren't getting enough help and want the European government to take them in. But things are changing, and Greeks are starting to take control of their own future. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, Greece is strengthening its borders and making its immigration laws stricter. They want to stop what they see as too many people coming into the country illegally. The government believes this is necessary to protect Greek traditions and keep society stable.
They've gained a toehold in Europe. But now, thousands of people have found themselves, in effect, prisoners on a small island. And down at the port today, many were trying to leave.
We want to get out of this hell. We want to get out of this hell. It's everyone wants this.
So all of these people are basically waiting for a ferry to go to Athens to get off the island. And there seems to have been some idea amongst them that that was going to happen today. So many have risked their lives to come here, and now more are arriving, and tempers are frayed. These are scenes calculated to put pressure on politicians across Europe. Bogged down in Syria, Turkey's president is sending a clear message. Remember the migrant crisis? It can happen again. In the short stretch of water between Lesbos and Turkey, the Greek Coast Guard has stepped up aggressive patrols. Yesterday, a young Syrian boy drowned in this channel when one dinghy capsized. These people crossed 2 days ago. They paid $500 each for their place on board a dinghy, prompted by Turkey's decision to allow migrants to leave. Why now? Why did you decide to come now?
Because the border is open. Turkish government announced to open for refugees. It's a big risk for us. The children are crying, they are very scary.
Now they're stuck here, a few hundred meters from where they landed. They're from Afghanistan, and their journey took them through Iran. On top of everything else, there's fear and caution over the coronavirus. But there is a more immediate concern. In recent weeks, there have been reports of masked men, angry locals roaming the streets at night, setting up roadblocks and threatening both the migrants and those who work with them. This is a deliberate campaign of intimidation, one man told us. He was so worried he didn't want to show his face on camera.
Προχθές κατεβήκαν 5 άτομα και γίνανε μέσα σε 5 λεπτά 200. Αυτοί ένα μεταξύ τους μαζεύονται σε μια ώρα μαζεύονται. Τέτοια οργάνωση έχουν.
The threats come from a small minority, but even the most hospitable locals admit their small island is struggling.
Δεν θέλω να έρχονται μετανάστες και εγώ δεν θέλω, γιατί δεν έχουμε αντοχές άλλες. Αλλά τη στιγμή που έρχονται, τι θα τους κάνεις, τους πνίξεις, τους σκοτώσεις, θα υπάρχει το αυτόματο και σκότωνε.
The EU today called Greece a shield in deterring migrants. Lesbos has borne much of that burden. There are currently 22,000 refugees and migrants here. More will surely arrive in the coming days. But when the ferry left for Athens this evening, it left without them.
Greece has been dealing with a very serious problem with migrants for a long time. They're saving many people who are in danger at sea, but they're also sending back boats that come from Turkey, which is allowed under European rules. Instead of blaming Greece, some say the blame should be on those who are pushing migrants to leave safe countries. Greece used to be a place where many people came to live, but now it's more like a bottleneck. A bottleneck is where a lot of things get stuck and can't move forward easily. This happened because of a rule that says migrants have to apply for asylum in the first European country they reach. So Greece has ended up with thousands of migrants stuck there, often in crowded camps. The Greek government, especially under the conservative New Democracy Party, has made strict rules to control how many migrants can come in. They've increased security at the borders, made it faster to decide who gets asylum, and sometimes they push boats with migrants away from their shores. These actions have caused arguments with human rights groups, but many Greeks support these measures because they're worried about safety and keeping their society strong.
This news has exclusively learned that the Biden administration is planning to refer some migrants in Latin America for resettlement in Greece and Italy.
Yeah, it's part of the White House's effort to discourage migrants from crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, this initiative would involve both countries welcoming migrants who are processed at the immigration centers in 4 Latin American countries. The offices were created last year as part of an effort to screen asylum seekers who hope to reach the U.S.
CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez broke this story. He's in San Antonio, Texas, with more. So what more can you tell us about this initiative and how it's expected to work?
Hi, Lindsay and Lana. That's right. The Biden administration, as we speak, is currently preparing to refer some migrants in the Latin America region to be resettled in both Italy and Greece as part of this broader effort that you mentioned to deter illegal crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border, which, as you know, have reached record levels over the past 3 years. Last year, the Biden administration created these immigration processing centers in 4 countries in Latin America to screen migrants who wanted to come to the U.S. And since then, it has been processing thousands of migrants who may be eligible for refugee status or other immigration benefits that allow them to come to the U.S. legally. Importantly, Canada and Spain have also been welcoming some of the migrants who are filing applications under this initiative. And now we have learned, of course, that Italy and Greece are also planning to join this multi-country initiative and also welcome some migrants and workers to their countries. The idea here, Lindsay and Lana, is to deter illegal immigration at the U.S.-Mexico border by offering would-be migrants legal opportunities to come to the U.S. and now other countries.
Greece is building a long fence along its border with Turkey to stop people from crossing illegally. They're doing this because they're worried about more people trying to come from Afghanistan after the Taliban took over there. This fence is a big symbol of their plan to control who comes into the country. Greece's approach to immigration has sparked debates both within the country and across Europe. On one hand, there are humanitarian concerns about how migrants are treated and whether Greece is fulfilling its obligations under international law. On the other hand, there are practical concerns about the economic impact of hosting large numbers of migrants, as well as security concerns about who is entering the country. Prime Minister Mitsotakis and his government argue that Greece must prioritise its own security and stability. They point to the challenges Greece faces: a struggling economy, social tensions, and the logistical difficulties of managing large numbers of asylum seekers. The government's tough stance on immigration reflects a broader trend in Europe, where many countries are grappling with how to balance humanitarian obligations with domestic concerns.
Well, I have so many questions about this, but maybe let's just go through some of the logistics about it. How does the Biden administration choose who is going to be sent to Greece or Italy? Does the U.S. government pay for these migrants to be sent there? Tell us more about how this is supposed to work.
These are all excellent questions, Lana. There are 4 of these immigration processing centers in 4 countries: Colombia, Ecuador, Costa Rica, and Guatemala. Those 4 countries have agreed to process some of these migrants who would be referred to either the U.S. or these countries that we mentioned: Spain, Canada, and now Italy and Greece. United Nations officials and others are helping the U.S. to screen vulnerable migrants traveling throughout the region, particularly in these 4 countries, and who are eligible to come to different countries so they can be vetted, screened, and then they can take a flight to their respective destinations. Not everyone qualifies. For example, in Guatemala, only Guatemalan migrants can apply for this initiative. In Costa Rica, only Venezuelan and Nicaraguan migrants can apply. And in Ecuador, only Cubans, Haitians, Colombians, and Venezuelans can apply for this initiative. So there are restrictions, but it is a U.S. funded and driven initiative, and so the U.S. would be subsidizing the transportation and the processing of these migrants because, again, from the U.S. perspective, the goal here is to divert people away from the U.S. border and to other countries or to the U.S., but in a legal fashion.
Why would Italy and Greece join the effort?
Excellent question. Obviously, Italy and Greece have faced migration crises of their own with massive numbers of migrants from Africa and the Middle East coming to their countries over the past 10 years or so. Obviously, after the Syrian refugee crisis, Turkey, Greece, and other countries in Europe and Asia face a massive influx in refugees. But both countries, Greece and Italy, for that matter, are in many ways transit countries because most migrants traveling there do not stay there. They're wanting to settle in other European countries, and they're right now facing significant labor shortages and aging populations. And so there is an incentive in both Italy and Greece to attract and welcome foreign workers. So the U.S. essentially would be able to relieve pressure at the border, and Italy and Greece would get foreign workers in a legal migration program.
All right, interesting. Camilo Montoyo Galvez breaking that news for us. Thanks, Camilo.
The European Union plays a significant role in shaping Greece's immigration policies. The Dublin Regulation, for example, stipulates that migrants must apply for asylum in the first EU country they enter. This places a disproportionate burden on countries like Greece, Italy and Spain, which are often the first point of entry for migrants crossing the Mediterranean. Greece has repeatedly called for reforms to the Dublin Regulation, arguing that it unfairly burdens frontline states and fails to distribute responsibility more evenly across the EU. However, efforts to reform the regulation have been slow-moving, with member states unable to reach a consensus on how to revise the rules.
There have been alarming reports that the Greek Coast Guard has thrown migrants into the sea. Is this true or just a rumor? Let's investigate. But first, let's clarify what this tale is about. The country who have over 2,000 islands and the birthplace of Olympic Games, Greece, has long faced accusations of conducting illegal pushback operations to stop migrants making the dangerous journey from Turkey to the European Union. Despite Athens consistently denying these claims, numerous investigations by international media and human rights groups, often supported by video evidence, have documented such practices. Yes, not only this, according to the sources, the investigation examined 15 pushback operations over 3 years. Drawing on local media, NGOs, the Turkish Coast Guard, and eyewitness accounts, the sources provided a detailed report. One witness, a Cameroonian national, recounted that he and 2 other migrants were arrested after landing on the island of Samos in September 2021. And, according to his testimony, the police forced them onto a Greek Coast Guard boat, beat them, and then threw them into the sea. He was the sole survivor, with the bodies of his companions later found on the Turkish coast. His lawyers are now calling for a double murder investigation. The European Union has acknowledged these terrible allegations, urging Greek authorities to comply with asylum and international law. At least tens of thousands of migrants, mainly from Syria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, have crossed into Greece from Turkey in recent years. The International Organization for Migration has called the Mediterranean Passage the world's most dangerous migration route. In 2023, a shipwreck off the Greek coast killed over 600 migrants. Survivors have accused the Greek Coast Guard of delaying their response, despite warnings from the U-Border agency Frontex and the Nango alarm phone. Although, on June 17, 2024, Greece denied the investigation, which reported that 43 migrants died in the Aegean Sea between May 2020 due to pushbacks by the Greek Coast Guard. Sources claim that 9 of these migrants were deliberately thrown overboard, an accusation Greece firmly rejects.
In the absence of EU-wide reforms, Greece has taken unilateral steps to strengthen its borders and manage migration flows. This includes building physical barriers, increasing patrols, and implementing stricter asylum procedures. These measures have been controversial, with human rights organisations criticising Greece for violating migrants' rights and international law. One of the most contentious aspects of Greece's immigration policy is its use of pushback operations. Pushbacks involve intercepting boats carrying migrants and forcibly returning them to their countries of origin or transit. Critics argue that pushbacks violate migrants' rights to seek asylum and expose them to risks, including violence and exploitation. Greece defends its use of pushbacks as necessary to protect its borders and deter illegal migration. The government argues that it is acting within the bounds of international law, citing the need to maintain order and security. However, human rights groups have documented cases of abuse and mistreatment during pushback operations, raising concerns about Greece's adherence to human rights standards.
In Egypt, it is time to remember the 2023 tragic boat accident that claimed the lives of 85 people. The sinking of the Adriana a year ago on Friday in international waters 75 kilometers off Pylos in southern Greece was one of the worst. Ali Elwans is one of the survivors to this sad incident. He is one of the just 104 survivors on the wreck of a dilapidated old metal fishing boat smuggling up to 750 migrants from North Africa to Europe.
I remember every second happened with me. Until now, I can't forget anything because me lost some friend in this ship. He's best friend for me. Me lost him. I can't forget anything happened until now.
Thousands have died in Mediterranean Sea shipwrecks in recent years as migrants from the Middle East, Asia and Africa seek a better life in the affluent European Union. Survivors like Ali are pushed by the hard economic times that has impacted many families looking for ways to survive.
Until now, me work anything. If someone has told me come to move this rubbish, I will go for him to move. No problem for this because me leave my country from money. For it's not easy.
Authorities in many countries blame smugglers who cram hundreds of people into unseaworthy vessels, most in an airless hold designed to store a catch of fish.
The European Union has been divided in its response to Greece's immigration policies. Some member states have expressed solidarity with Greece and supported its efforts to secure its borders. Others have criticised Greece for its treatment of migrants and called for greater respect for human rights. The situation is further complicated by geopolitical tensions and external pressures. Greece shares a maritime border with Turkey, a key transit country for migrants from the Middle East, Africa and Asia. Tensions between Greece and Turkey have escalated at times, exacerbating the migration crisis and complicating efforts to find a coordinated EU-wide response. Efforts to manage migration in Greece have also been shaped by broader geopolitical dynamics, including the Syrian civil war and instability in North Africa. These crises have fueled waves of asylum seekers and economic migrants seeking refuge in Europe, with Greece serving as a primary gateway. The Greek government has sought to balance its obligations under international law with domestic political considerations. Prime Minister Mitsotakis has emphasised the need for a comprehensive and sustainable approach to migration that respects both humanitarian principles and national sovereignty.
Let's talk about the migrant crisis. I was struck by a story I saw yesterday that the migrant crisis here in Britain, the UK people smuggling racket, is being run by 500 global gangs all over the world. I mean, you are talking about thousands and thousands of people making a lot of money. It's very sophisticated. They're supplying the boats. A lot of the boats apparently being made in Germany, transported to the northern coast of France for the migrants to climb into. And incredibly, they're so confident of their operation at the moment that they're offering special Olympic deals. For migrants. They can take their kids free during the Olympic Games, because this is a special offer because all the cops who are currently, the French cops, les gendarmes, who are currently patrolling the northern beaches of France, will probably be in Paris tending to security at the Olympic Games. So special offer for the people smuggling gangs to the migrants. You can take your kids free. So isn't that special? But, well, let's talk to political consultant Suzanne Evans. Thanks for joining us, Suzanne.
Hello.
This is my point, and I think you and I touched on this the other week, but it is my perennial point is this. It is fashionable for Keir Starmer and indeed Rishi Sunak and all of our mainstream political elite right now to say we've got to crack down on the evil people smugglers. We must catch them all, and that way we will end the migrant crisis. No, we will not. Unless we stop the migrants, there will always be people smugglers. And this story revealing there are 500 global gangs running the small boats to Britain migrants racket. Many of them, funny enough, in Vietnam, all over the world. 500 of these gangs. And Keir Starmer says, oh, I'm going to put them all in prison. It's just not going to happen. If you don't stop the migrants, there will always be people smugglers. So if you don't stop the migrants, we will always have a migrant crisis. Am I right, Suzanne?
Yes, of course you're right, because of course it's not the people smugglers that come to Britain and say, here I am, I'm holding up my hands, put me in cuffs, arrest me. It's the migrants that are coming over. It's the criminal gangs worldwide who are running Britain's and indeed other countries in the world, their immigration policy. So tackling the people smugglers has got to be done where it is possible using international police resources and so on and so forth. But ultimately, we've got to stop the migrants coming and we've got to stop the pull factors. It's really sick, I think, Kevin, what you've just outlined about the Paris Olympics coming up and this kids go free deal. I mean, how sick and vile do these people have to be to encourage children to get...
One aspect of Greece's approach to migration that has received less attention is its integration policies. While much of the focus has been on border security and asylum procedures, Greece has also been grappling with how to integrate migrants into its society. This includes providing access to education, healthcare, and employment opportunities for asylum seekers and refugees. Integration is a complex and multifaceted process that requires coordination between government agencies, non-governmental organisations and local communities. In recent years, Greece has made efforts to improve its integration policies and support mechanisms for migrants. For example, the government has implemented programmes to provide language courses, vocational training and job placement assistance to migrants. These initiatives are aimed at helping migrants acquire the skills and resources they need to rebuild their lives in Greece. However, challenges remain in ensuring effective integration outcomes for migrants. Economic hardship, social exclusion, and cultural differences can create barriers to integration, making it difficult for migrants to fully participate in Greek society.
Get into dinghies and cross the channel, putting their lives at risk. I mean, I don't know what their parents are thinking. I don't know what they're saying to their parents, but I think just shows how criminal and heinous these gangs are. Now, of course, there's 500 gangs. That's a border force source has come up with that figure. Presumably, that's the number of gangs that the border force thinks it knows about. There are probably far more as well. So, yes, tackle them where we can, but it's certainly not going to solve the problem. The only way we're going to solve this problem ultimately is to stop those boats coming, to turn those boats back, to make sure that nobody actually lands on our shores. Because let's be honest, nobody who has a genuine need of asylum needs rescuing from France. You don't need to rush to safety from a country like France. And it's not just, of course, the UK that's getting absolutely incensed about this. Asylum cases and applications have gone rocketing up in Europe as well. They've gone up 18% in the last 12 months to about, well, nearly 1.2 million people across the EU. So it's not just us who are facing this problem. You know, other countries, Denmark, Greece, Austria are getting very angry and annoyed about this. And there was a talk at one point that they'd be trying to copy a Rwanda-style policy to try and stop the issues in their countries. Ireland, of course, recently, there's a common travel area between Britain and Ireland. 80% of migrants, asylum seekers going to Ireland now, the Irish reckon, are coming from the UK, abusing that common travel area. So this is a massive problem. It is an international problem. I've always said for a long time, in a sense, it's a bit of a good news story, because I think the fact that these people can pay people smugglers thousands and thousands of pounds to come across in these boats actually, in a sense, says that the developing world is getting richer. And people who previously wouldn't have been able to afford to pay people smugglers now can. So in a kind of warped sense, it's a bit of a good news story. But of course, it's not good news for the people of Britain. They've got to be stopped. We cannot have this endless, constant pull on our very limited space and resources.
Agreed. Now, our politicians have a habit of looking for easy targets, to build their political narratives around, so that you never hear politicians say, I'll tell you what we're going to do with our drug problem. We've got to target working class drug users. They never say that. It's always middle class drug users. Easy targets, you see, easy targets, acceptable in social circles, acceptable in Westminster. So it is not acceptable, it seems, Suzanne, for Westminster mainstream politicians to stand up and say the truth. That is, we must stop the migrants. Instead, easy target, we must get the evil people smugglers. Now, I'm sure...
In addition to integration challenges, Greece faces ongoing humanitarian concerns related to migrant detention and asylum processing. Overcrowded and unsanitary conditions in migrant camps have been widely documented, raising questions about Greece's capacity to provide adequate care and protection for asylum seekers. Human rights organisations have called for improvements in conditions and increased oversight of migrant detention facilities. They have also criticised Greece's use of detention as a means of deterring illegal migration, arguing that it violates migrants' rights and undermines efforts to promote humane and lawful migration policies. Despite these challenges, Greece remains committed to managing migration in a manner that upholds both its international obligations and domestic priorities. The government continues to seek support from the European Union and international partners in addressing the complexities of migration and asylum.
You agree with me? I hope they catch as many evil people smugglers as is humanly possible. But we've just been talking about the scale of this operation. They will never be able to catch even a small fraction of the people making billions out of this vile industry. So when Starmer stands up with his long speech about, oh, we're going to get the people smugglers, and all the others as well, it's not just him, it's just word soup. It's parliamentary Westminster word soup that doesn't add up to a hill of beans. Unless we start getting the migrants, stopping the migrants, this situation will continue. And of course, to continue with my point about how this is convenient political talk, they also act as if these migrants are manipulated and forced into these small boats. They're absolutely exploited by these gangs. Well, they're handing them 5,000 quid. That's not manipulation. They're not being manipulated. They're customers. We need to stop this custom, don't we?
You know, I don't agree that they're customers. I think they're criminals.
Well, what are they then?
Well,
they're still customers.
I think they're criminals.
Well, they're still customers, though.
Because the very nature of the fact that they have paid somebody knowing that money is going to be used to get here illegally, that makes them a criminal customer, arguably.
Well, they are a customer. It's like buying drugs. If you buy drugs, you're a criminal. Yes, you're also a customer. So that's my point. Yeah. Do not characterise these migrants, many of whom have turned up in expensive clothes with their mobile phones, looking forward to their economic opportunities after becoming economic migrants, which is what they are. They pay the money. You know, to characterise them as sort of quivering victims who are just bullied and forced and cajoled by these evil people smugglers is a totally wrong characterisation, and it won't get us anywhere to continue on that level.
I totally agree, but of course we have the problem in Westminster that they're not seen as criminals, they're not seen as paying customers, they're actually seen as refugees welcome. You know, that's the kind of phrase that we keep hearing, and it's all very well for Keir Starmer now to talk about cracking down on this, and he'll be the one that stops the boats because Rishi Sunak's failed to stop the boats. But the fact is, most of those Labour Party members of Parliament, you remember they talked about refugees welcome. When those children who get a free pass over here have to be either rescued for the sea or sadly can't be rescued and die, there's not going to be an outcry about the people smugglers. You and I both know that, Kevin. There's going to be an outcry from the Westminster Party about this is terrible. There aren't safe routes to come from refugees, despite the fact that tens of thousands of people come here via safe routes every year. This is what the narrative is going to be. It's appalling. Children are dying, and not. We've got to.
Looking ahead, the future of Greece's immigration policy will likely be shaped by a combination of domestic political dynamics, EU policy developments, and global migration trends. As the migration crisis evolves and new challenges emerge, Greece will continue to navigate its role as a frontline state in Europe's response to migration. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and for more content like this, subscribe to the channel.